Hey, before we get into today's Friday News Roundup, I have a favor to ask. CityCast is running its annual listener survey, and we need to hear from you. You can find it at citycast.fm/survey, and it takes just 7 minutes to complete. And then you'll be eligible to win a $250 Visa gift card and some CityCast Philly swag. Again, it's at citycast.fm/survey. Thanks. Today on CityCast Philly, it's Friday, which means we're rounding up the biggest news stories around Philly. We've got the details on how people are responding to the return to the office mandate. Could the Frank Rizzo statue be returning too? And who's the most valuable Philadelphian? It's Friday, May 24th. I'm Trinae Nuri, and here's what Philly's talking about. Joining me this week is Jake Bloomgard, commercial real estate reporter at the Philadelphia Inquirer. Hey, Jake.
Hey there, how are you?
Good. And Mike Donofrio, reporter at Axios Philadelphia. Welcome back, Mike.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Before we get into the news of the week, my icebreaker story comes from NBC Philadelphia. So the Philadelphia Visitor Center Corporation gave their first ever Most Valuable Philadelphian award this week. Who is being named for the first ever the Most Valuable Philadelphian? Can you guess?
Oh God. Oh boy, should I guess something boring? Like Ben Franklin? I feel like it's like an obvious answer.
Okay,
but...
that's a good one. That's a good one.
I can't remember. I saw the headline somewhere. It was like, I think an Eagles player or something. Or maybe a Phillies player. I can't remember. Somebody sports related.
Yes. Brandon Graham, Philadelphia Eagles defensive lineman.
Oh, wow.
And according to the article, the Philadelphia Visitor Center Corporation gave him this award because he exemplifies the city's values and impacts people's lives on and off the field. Graham has been with the Philadelphia Eagles his entire career, 14 years, and this fall will be his 15th season. So, Mike, who would be the MVP for you?
All right, hold on. Let me think about it. I know this guy. He owns a supermarket. His name's Donta Rose, and he opened a grocery outlet in Sharswood a few years ago. We highlighted him back in 2022. I should reach back out to him and see how he's doing. But anyway, he's helping the community. He's a local guy. He's doing everything right and, making this community better. So if I would say they should nominate somebody, it would be him. But there's a gazillion people out there in Philly doing awesome things too. So there's no shortage of people to celebrate here.
Jake, what about for you?
Oh, God. Okay, let me think about this. I can't do an Eagle because they did an Eagle. I guess I could say Bryce Harper because the Phillies are doing really well and he's exceptionally good at baseball.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a cop-out. Come on, Jake.
And I, in fact, saw you at a baseball game this week. So
Yes. I think I'm going to second that motion. It just feels really good to just be in a city that's winning. It just feels good. It feels real good.
I know. I hope we're winning in October, too.
I know. That's when it really counts.
Yes, although, knock on wood.
Right. Knock on all the wood. Where are the rabbit's feet? Say prayers. All right, let's get into the news of the week. Jake, starting with a story that, you've been focused on. A lot of people were sharing this on social media. It's the announcement from the mayor that all remaining city employees are expected to be back in the office full time starting July 15th. Now, this announcement definitely didn't come as a surprise. And Jake, you've been on the show before to explain, the reasoning kind of behind Mayor Sherrell Parker's stance on getting city workers back to the office. So can you just remind us, why is Mayor Parker so adamant to get all city workers back into the office, especially when former Mayor Jim Kenney, he kind of left this decision up to individual department heads?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that she's thinking. One, in a story I reported several months ago, she released a statement to the Inquirer, kind of saying that part of the reason she wanted city workers to come back 5 days a week was that, she wanted to see more foot traffic downtown. There was like a lot of concern around kind of the commercial real estate sector downtown and also the small shops downtown, the restaurants, the coffee shops, the diners, retail, all these kind of like the backbone of small business downtown was kind of weakened by the pandemic and the lessened foot traffic, especially during the week. And obviously the mayor can't make private sector employers bring their workers back more often. But I think her thinking was, one, if she brought the municipal workers back more, they would spend more money downtown. Two, it would provide kind of more like eyes on the street and just like, there's been a lot of concern about crime downtown, even though, while Philly did see a big spike in crime during the pandemic, in downtown, it was like pretty minor and not really that big of a deal by the numbers. But like there was kind of a theory that like because there were fewer people around, it could kind of feel more unsafe. And then I think there's also a degree to which she kind of saw this as there were a lot of municipal workers who weren't able to work from home during the pandemic and as a result often got like sick. So I think she kind of saw this as like kind of bringing more like balance to the municipal workforce.
She's also said before, like she kind of wants this government that people can see and touch and, like feel.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally a big part of it too.
Jake, how many people does this new policy impact?
So I don't have an exact count, but there are definitely thousands of workers who will be affected. So according to Parker's administration, 20% of the municipal workforce is still working remote or working hybrid, more likely. So that's probably at least like 4,000 to 5,000 people.
Jake, you and your colleague Anna Orso reported that there was some pushback with the announcement of this return to in-person work full time. Who responded and what was their response?
So there's a couple different levels here. One, we heard from a lot of municipal workers who are outraged even just by like the timing of this. Like the fact that Parker is trying to have kind of radically change their schedules in terms of like in-office work in the middle of July, when a lot of people already had planned for the summer that were based around being kind of like hybrid or remote for like a week or two for like vacation or something. And, or even just like, having kids in like camp or something like that. There was like a lot of people that already built their schedules around this. And like, even if you look at like when Comcast started having their workers come back to the office a lot more, they started it after summer, after the Labor Day holiday. Or, there's some other private sector employers who've kind of timed their kind of return to the office like after New Year's, kind of like around these like big calendar changes. So starting in the middle of July really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. It was kind of adding insult to injury. So yeah, so we just heard from a lot of people who are like, I'm going to start looking for a new job, like
which is not good because there are a lot of openings, I feel like, in city government, right?
Oh yeah, there's a huge municipal worker shortage right now. It's a very big problem. And, this is a big argument against Parker doing what she's doing, is that like city work already doesn't pay that well in comparison to the private sector. And now you're going to have it not pay as well. And you have to work in the office more than like almost any private sector jobs make you do at this point. And the kind of like effect this is going to have on the ability of the city government to recruit is an argument that the municipal unions have made. They obviously really want to see the municipal workforce go back up to the level where it was in 2019. And they're like, this is just going to undermine the ability of the city to hire. And they're also really irritated because they think this is something that Mayor Parker should negotiate with them in collective bargaining. And their contract is coming up soon. So they're about to head into negotiations, and this kind of caught them flat-footed and also really made them very angry. So in short, it's just not not been well received by the municipal workers or their unions.
And likewise, what was Parker's reaction to how unions were reacting to this policy?
I mean, she, I think, just is like, I'm the mayor. I can do this. This is not something I'm going to bargain over. I think there is some question as to whether, especially with the starting this in the middle of July, that she's like maybe just trying to like start on a really like strong pitch and a strong proposal. And so then when she, if she does like negotiate with him a bit, or she, pushes it back a little bit, like that's like giving in like a little bit. But, that's purely speculation on my part, I should say. I have not like heard that from her or any of her people. But it's just one of the theories I've heard of like why she maybe started this in mid-July as opposed to after Labor Day.
Are there any, I don't know, extra perks or incentivizing to kind of get people excited about coming back downtown?
I mean, there's certainly some things that she, in her announcement, made clear. She's going to make the Friday after Thanksgiving a holiday for municipal workers, which it wasn't previously. She's going to make sick time more kind of available in terms of like using it to cover, I think children or elderly family members who are ill, going to extend parental leave. I'm not entirely clear on the details of a lot of these, but she certainly was like, I understand that this is going to be a bit of a burden, and I am like ready to like offer some concessions to kind of ease people into this and make kind of like working from the office less burdensome.
I know we were talking a lot about like the pushback, but were there people kind of in agreement with the city policy?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There were a number of union leaders, not in the public sector, but the construction workers who are closely allied with Parker. It should be noted that the construction unions often kind of like work with the real estate companies in terms of like local politics. They often kind of have the same material interests. And so, this is something that the development industry certainly wanted to see the mayor do, and it's not a surprise that the construction unions would agree. The SEIU, which has a lot of workers who work as like janitors and security guards in the office towers, they also endorse this move. And then there's kind of like, the more obvious business leaders and whatnot who think this is a good idea.
You mentioned about the foot traffic. Center City still isn't at pre-pandemic levels when it comes to, people hustling and bustling downtown like they used to be. So how much of a difference will we see downtown once people are back in July?
It's a really good question. I'm curious how much of an impact this is really going to have. And partly, a lot of these municipal workers already were coming downtown a couple days a week. So I would think that we might get maybe like an extra percentage or two of like foot traffic downtown. But, on the whole, in terms of who we're really missing from the weekday foot traffic are the private sector workers. And I do think that part of the mayor's thinking here is that maybe, if the city sets an example, then other private sector employers might be moved to, or might be more easy to move to get their workers to come back, like a little bit more often. I think there are some large employers who have already kind of brought their workers back more often, like Comcast. I just don't know if there are people who are going to be influenced by seeing the municipal workforce come back if they weren't already influenced by like Comcast coming back more often or something like that, But I'll say even a lot of like large real estate companies, who really have a lot invested in property downtown, a lot of them don't even have their workers come back 5 days a week. I don't know. I mean, it is something, I've been hearing from some municipal workers that they're getting propositioned by private companies now, that they're like, we hear the city is going to make you come to the office 5 days a week. Well, if you work for us, you've only got to like do 4 days or 3 days or whatever. So I think there probably are also some companies that just see some amount of hybrid work as a competitive advantage.
All right. Well, what are the next steps in this? Will there be a compromise? Will people come back?
I mean, I think they're going to have to come back. But also I think the real answer The real answer is essentially, I think the unions are really going to fight this. And I think that there is going to be, it's not impossible that there's a lawsuit, and then that also the bargaining will be very contentious when the contract comes up. The unions do have some leverage and power here, and they could make life pretty uncomfortable for the administration. So I think I would say this is not over yet, but I also would guess that people at the end of this will be coming back to the office more than they had been.
All right. Well, we'll keep our eyes on this story in the coming weeks. Thanks, Jake.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You can read more reporting from Jake by checking out the link in our show notes. More news of the week after the break. All right, shifting gears. Mike, you got a scoop that the Frank Rizzo statue could be returning to the group of supporters who actually helped pay for the statue years ago. And this is all because of a lawsuit. Before we get into this legal fight, though, can you just remind us why this bronze statue of Frank Rizzo, who is the former Philadelphia mayor and former police commissioner of the late 1960s, early 70s, was even removed from city property to begin with?
All right. So the sculpture, it was installed, I think in 1999, or late 90s, 99. And it's been controversial. It's been a controversial symbol just for a long time, probably since then, right? Why? Because who he was kind of divided the city, right? To supporters, right? He's a South Philly guy. He's a city champion. He devoted himself to public service, and he was a law and order mayor and police commissioner, and he cracked down on crime. That was his thing. So, but to opponents, particularly those in the African-American, the LGBT communities, he just symbolized everything that was wrong with the police in terms of their tactics, his policies, and just totally just cast him as a symbol, as racist, a racist, a bigot, and as promoting unchecked police brutality, right? So because of that, supporters would gather and celebrate him from time to time. I remember doing something in 18 or 19. There was some celebration, supporters gathered around and celebrated his birthday or something. And then for opponents, he would just be, the symbol was a gathering spot and things like that. So during the racial justice protests in 2020, again, it was a target. It was kind of a gathering place for protesters. It was the statue was defaced. Protesters tried to light it on fire. So the statue had been scheduled to be removed anyway. It was located in front of the Municipal Services building, and they were redoing the whole front. And Mayor Kenny at the time said it was scheduled to be removed, as the city was redoing that whole plaza there. But during the protest, he just accelerated the timeline and just unilaterally decided to remove it.
Right. And this kind of all happened overnight, late night, early morning. It just surprised a lot of people, I think, too.
It was unexpected. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you also report that the Frank L. Rizzo Monument Committee, which is the group who helped bring the statue to life, is close to a settlement with the city. What are they asking for?
So basically, they just want the statue back. They paid for it. They want it back. There were some issues, too, with the process over how the city removed it. But I guess at this point, it doesn't matter. It's not going back in front of the Municipal Services building. So basically, according to them and their lawsuit, the agreement that they had with the city when they donated it said that they had a right to reclaim the statue if the city never wanted it. And that's what they want to do.
Interesting. And why has it taken so long for this lawsuit to get settled?
I would say the justice system moves slowly.
Gotcha.
That would be my guess, but also it's a controversial statue. And, Mayor Sherelle Parker declined to comment through a spokesperson, but she said back in 2020 when it was removed that, it was basically represented bigotry and hatred. So she obviously supported its removal. And Mayor Kenny had a strong dislike for the statue and obviously was the mayor and was pushing for it to be removed anyway. If I could guess, the city probably doesn't want the statue to be returned because the city probably doesn't want it placed somewhere.
Right. And I was just going to ask you, that's an even bigger question. Where could the Rizzo statue go once this lawsuit gets settled?
That's a great question. I don't know. The attorney for the group George Paquetto said, they're going to try to find a location for it. South Philadelphia is an obvious spot because that's where Frank Rizzo's from, and that's what what Paquetto said as well. But I don't know. I don't know how that process works. I don't know if a private individual can just put it on their property.
Yeah. And I was just thinking, though, like when I read the article, I was thinking about maybe like possible security measures that might have to go into effect because the Frank Rizzo mural down in the Italian market used to get vandalized, defaced, all of that.
Yeah. So big picture kind of thing. I feel like just the return of the statue is part of this like long running rollback of almost any gains that protesters made in 2020, right? The removal of the statue obviously could be returned. The city nixed this strict residency requirement for cops, and the Citizen Police Oversight Commission, it's been just floundering for years, right?
Yeah, we talked about that last week on the show. Yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like the statue has been just such a controversial symbol for so long that it just divides the city,
Yeah. Mike, even a larger perspective in this story is that you brought up in your article that the Rizzo statue isn't the only controversial statue in Philly. We've got the Columbus statue in South Philly.
Yes, and that's kind of what I was saying about kind of any gains that protesters had made in 2020. They just have evaporated or just reversed. You brought up the Columbus statue. There was a big effort by the city to remove this statue in Marconi Plaza of Christopher Columbus. It was boxed up for years, and George Paquetto, the lawyer for the committee trying to get the Rizzo statue back, was also involved in that lawsuit to unbox the Columbus statue and to keep it where it is. And that was unboxed, and now that's open to the public. There was a push to remove the Christopher Columbus monument at Penn's Landing that fell through. So it's hard to see what kind of real visible gains the protesters made that persist today.
All right. Well, we'll keep our eyes on this story as well. You can read more of Mike's reporting by checking out the link in our show notes. That was Mike Donofrio, reporter at Axios Philadelphia, and Jake Bloomgart, commercial real estate reporter at the Philadelphia Inquirer. Thank you both so much for joining me on CityCast Philly.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
It's time for the tip of the week, where we share a life hack for living in Philly. It's the long Memorial Day weekend and the perfect time to visit some of the free stuff we have in the city and maybe check it off your bucket list. You can go to the Liberty Bell in Old City, head over to the Love Statue in Center City, or if you aren't afraid of heights, visit Sierra Green in University City. For more Memorial Day weekend events in Philly, definitely check out the Hey Philly newsletter. If you have a tip of the week, we'd love to hear from you too. Call or text us at 215-259-8170. That's all for today here on CityCast Philly. Our producers are Abby Fritz and Lizzie Goldsmith. Our Hey Philly newsletter editor is Asha Prahar. And our host is me, Trinae Nuri. Music is by Philly's own Interminable, with additional music from All the Kimonos and James Weldon. If you enjoyed the show, tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter, Hey Philly. We'll be back Tuesday morning with more news from around the city. Have a great weekend and be safe, y'all. Bye.